66 million years ago, an asteroid roughly 6 miles wide slammed into what's now Mexico's Yucatán Peninsula. The impact unleashed energy equal to billions of nuclear bombs, triggering earthquakes, tsunamis, and global firestorms. Dust and debris choked the skies, blocking sunlight for months or even years. 3/4 of all species vanished, including every non-avian dinosaur. What followed were the Paleocene and Eocene epochs, spanning roughly 66 to 34 million years ago, the age when mammals began to rise and the planet rebuilt itself from the ashes. At first, things were calm, life was fragile, ecosystems unstable. But once nature recovered, it started creating monsters again. Somehow, the creatures that came after the dinosaurs weren't gentler. They were stranger, more nightmarish, and in some cases, absolutely, catastrophically huge. We're going to walk through this nightmare period chronologically and taxonomically, meeting the creatures that made the post-dinosaur world more dangerous than anything before it. By the time we're done, you'll understand why the extinction of the dinosaurs didn't end the age of monsters. It just changed their shapes and, somehow, made them worse. Let's start with something that sounds almost ridiculous until you actually picture it. Birds as apex predators. Not flying raptors, picking off small prey. Ground-dwelling, flightless birds that could run you down, pin you with talons the size of kitchen knives, and crush your skull with a beak designed specifically for that purpose. The phorusrhacids, better known as terror birds, dominated South America from roughly 62 million years ago until about 2 million years ago. These creatures successfully terrorized an entire continent for nearly 60 million years, making them one of the most enduring and successful predator lineages in Earth's history. The largest species, like Kelencan guillemois, stood up to 10 feet tall or 3 meters and weighed around 250 to 280 pounds, or 115 to 130 kilograms. The skull alone measured over 28 inches or 71 centimeters long, bigger than most dogs, mounted on a bird with legs built for sprinting and a hooked beak that could deliver crushing blows with terrifying precision. When they caught prey, the killing was efficient and brutal. That massive beak could strike like a pickaxe, piercing and crushing with each blow. Some researchers believe they used a repeated striking technique, hammering prey with the beak's hooked tip until something vital broke. Others suggest they might have grabbed smaller prey and shaken them violently, using neck muscles powerful enough to snap spines. Either way, death came from a bird, which somehow makes it more unsettling. Modern corvids and parrots demonstrate problem-solving abilities that rival many mammals. Terror birds likely possessed similar cognitive capabilities, which means they weren't just fast and deadly. They were fast, deadly, and smart enough to adapt their hunting strategies based on prey behavior. South America during much of the terror bird's reign was an island continent, isolated from North America by water. Without competition from the large mammalian predators that dominated other continents, birds had free rein to fill every open niche. They chose nightmare fuel. Multiple terror bird species emerged, ranging from human-sized to absolutely massive, each specialized for different prey and hunting strategies. The smaller species probably hunted like oversized roadrunners, chasing down rodents and small mammals with speed and precision. The larger ones? They took on prey up to the size of modern horses. Evidence suggests they were apex predators in their ecosystems, sitting at the top of food chains and competing only with large crocodilians and the occasional big cat that managed to cross over from North America during brief land bridges. When the Isthmus of Panama finally formed about 3 million years ago, connecting North and South America permanently, terror birds actually tried to invade northward. Titanis walleri made it to Florida and Texas, bringing the nightmare to a new continent. It didn't last. Competition from established North American predators eventually pushed them out. But for a brief geological moment, North America had to deal with 10-foot murder birds that could outrun horses. The last terror birds went extinct only about 2 million years ago, which means they overlapped with early human ancestors. Our distant relatives in South America lived in a world where being hunted by a giant, intelligent bird was a legitimate daily concern. That's not ancient history on geological timescales. That's yesterday. While terror birds were establishing their reign of terror on land, something even more disturbing was slithering in South America's rivers and swamps. In 2009, paleontologists working in Colombia's Cerrejón Formation discovered vertebrae that seemed impossibly large for a snake. They ran the numbers again. The numbers didn't change. Titanoboa kerrionensis was 42 feet long, or 12.8 meters, weighed approximately 2,500 pounds, or 1.1 tons, and was as thick around the middle as a car tire. For context, the largest modern anacondas reach maybe 20 to 25 feet and weigh 400 to 500 pounds. Titanoboa was more than twice as long and 5 times heavier. The reason for this incredible size comes down to thermodynamics and timing. Titanoboa lived about 58 million years ago during the Paleocene epoch, when global temperatures were significantly higher than today. The Cerrejón region sat near the equator and experienced average temperatures around 86 to 93 degrees Fahrenheit, or 30 to 34 degrees Celsius. Snakes are ectothermic. They rely on external heat sources to regulate body temperature. Warmer environments allow for larger body sizes because the snake can maintain the metabolic rate necessary to sustain more mass. But size is just a number until you consider what it means functionally. A 42-foot constrictor doesn't squeeze things to death the way we usually imagine. It doesn't wrap around prey and crush bones. It's more insidious. Each time the prey exhales, the snake tightens slightly, then tightens again with the next exhale. The prey can't draw another full breath. Slowly, inevitably, the chest cavity collapses and organs fail from pressure and lack of oxygen. Death by constriction is death by mechanical suffocation, and Titanoboa could apply thousands of pounds of pressure across dozens of contact points. What was it eating? The Cerrejón Formation fossils suggest an ecosystem rich with crocodilians, large turtles, and fish. Titanoboa was an aquatic or semi-aquatic predator, probably spending most of its time in rivers and swamps where it could ambush prey coming to drink or crossing between water bodies. Crocodiles up to 20 feet long shared these waters. Titanoboa ate them. Titanoboa went extinct as global temperatures cooled, and the lush tropical forests of the Paleocene gave way to more varied climates. Its size, which had been an advantage in warm conditions, became a liability when ambient temperatures dropped, and maintaining that massive body became metabolically expensive. But for several million years, if you were in South America's waterways, you shared space with a snake that could eat crocodiles. The dinosaurs were gone, but the Paleocene had found something arguably worse to put in their place. And then there were the hell pigs. Though the more accurate description would be, not cute, not pigs, just hell. The common name, hell pig, undersells things considerably. These animals weren't pigs, they were entelodonts, a family of omnivorous mammals that looked like someone combined a pig, a bear, and society's worst nightmares into a single aggressive package. They dominated North America and Eurasia from the late Eocene through the early Miocene, roughly 37 to 16 million years ago. Entelodonts varied in size across different species and time periods. The smaller ones were wolf-sized and probably hunted in packs. The larger species, like Daeodon and Archaeotherium, could reach 6 feet or 1.8 meters tall at the shoulder and weigh close to 1,000 pounds or 450 kilograms. They had massive skulls, up to 3 feet or 90 centimeters long, with powerful jaws, prominent canines, and bone-crushing molars in the back. The skull structure tells you everything. this wasn't an animal designed for delicate feeding. Those jaws could bite through bone, crunch through turtle shells, and tear apart carcasses with mechanical efficiency. Toothwear patterns suggest they regularly consumed bone, either by scavenging or by being thorough with their kills. The jaw muscles required to power that bite, attached to prominent bony flanges on the skull, giving entelodonts a distinctive, aggressive profile. But here's where it gets properly disturbing. Entelodonts were smart. Their brain-to-body ratio was higher than most contemporary mammals, suggesting cognitive capabilities well beyond simple predatory instinct. They were problem solvers, likely social animals that could coordinate and adapt their behavior based on circumstances. And everything was on their menu, literally. Fossil stomach contents and coprolites reveal an omnivorous appetite that included plants, small mammals, carrion, and fresh kills whenever the opportunity arose. Some researchers believe larger entelodonts were primarily scavengers that used their size and aggression to drive other predators away from kills. Others think they were active hunters, capable of taking down prey as large as primitive horses and camels. Evidence from fossil sites also shows that entelodonts were brutal to each other. Many specimens show healed bite marks on their skulls and limbs from other entelodonts, suggesting regular violent confrontations within the species. These weren't gentle giants having territorial disputes. They were fighting viciously enough to fracture bones, and they were surviving those encounters to fight again later. The truth is probably somewhere in between, and worse than either option alone. An animal that will eat anything, can crunch through bone, is smart enough to be opportunistic, and big enough to intimidate most other predators is effectively a roving apocalypse for everything smaller and weaker. You couldn't hide from them by climbing. They'd eat whatever was on the ground. You couldn't outlast them at a carcass. They'd drive you off or simply eat you too. You couldn't even necessarily avoid them by being alive instead of dead. Fresh meat is still meat. North America, during the Oligocene, when entelodonts were at their peak, was an open landscape of grasslands and scattered forests. And entelodonts went extinct around 16 million years ago, possibly due to climate change and competition from more modern predator groups like dogs and cats. Their niche, intelligent, aggressive omnivores that can kill or scavenge as needed, was eventually filled by bears, which are terrifying enough without being quite as nightmarish as a hell pig. But entelodonts weren't the only mammals experimenting with terrifying new body plans. The absence of dinosaurs created opportunities for mammalian carnivores to diversify in ways that would have been impossible when T-Rex ruled the food chain. What followed was a parade of nightmare creatures, each more improbable than the last. Andrewsarchus mongoliensis might hold the record for largest terrestrial carnivorous mammal ever. Though we're working from incomplete evidence, we've only found one skull, and what a skull it was. At 33 inches long, or 83 centimeters, it's the largest known skull of any terrestrial mammal carnivore, attached to a body that might have measured 13 feet or 4 meters long and weighed close to 2,000 pounds or 900 kilograms. The skull structure suggests a predator that could bite through basically anything. Andrewsarchus had massive canines and crushing molars, indicating it could both kill prey and process bones and tough tissue afterwards. Its closest modern relatives are hippos and whales, which tells you absolutely nothing useful about what it was like, because Andrewsarchus looked like a wolf designed by someone who'd only heard wolves described second-hand and thought they should be much, much bigger and angrier. Some researchers think Andrewsarchus was primarily a scavenger, using its size to dominate carcasses and its powerful jaws to access marrow and other resources smaller predators couldn't reach. Others believe it was an active predator, capable of taking down large prey. Given the ecosystem it lived in, Eocene Mongolia, about 45 million years ago, it probably did both, because that's what successful predators do when they're big enough to bully everyone else. Then there's the Hyaenodon family, which despite the name has nothing to do with actual hyenas. These were creodonts, an extinct order of carnivorous mammals that dominated before modern carnivores such as cats, dogs, and bears took over. Hyaenodons ranged from small species the size of house cats to Hyaenodon gigas, which was built like a massive dog and weighed up to 500 pounds or 230 kilograms. What made hyaenodons particularly effective was their jaw structure. They had specialized carnassial teeth, blade-like molars designed for slicing meat, and bone-crushing capabilities in their rear teeth. This gave them versatility. They could process both fresh kills and scavenged carcasses efficiently. They were also relatively intelligent and probably hunted in packs, using coordination to take down prey larger than themselves. But Sarcastodon mongoliensis took the title of the most terrifying member of this group, another Mongolian nightmare from the Eocene. Sarcastodon looked vaguely bear-like, with a massive head, powerful limbs, and a body that might have weighed 1,800 pounds or 800 kilograms. Its teeth were enormous, large, conical, and built for crushing. The skull structure suggests bite forces comparable to or exceeding modern polar bears. What sets Sarcastodon apart is the mystery of exactly what it was doing with all that crushing power. Some paleontologists think it was primarily a scavenger, using its massive jaws to crack open bones left by other predators. Others believe it was an active predator that used its bite to crush the skulls and bones of prey directly. Given that it lived alongside other large predators and had to compete for resources, it probably employed both strategies opportunistically. The common thread across all these mammals is experimentation. It's as if nature was testing different approaches to being a large carnivore. Andrew Zarkas went for maximum skull size and crushing power. Hyaenodon emphasized pack hunting and efficient meat processing. Sarcastodon chose bear-like proportions with enhanced bite force. Each approach worked for millions of years before eventually being outcompeted by more refined predator groups. You might think crocodiles are already sufficiently terrifying. Modern saltwater crocodiles can exceed 20 feet or 6 meters and weigh over 2,000 pounds or 900 kilograms. Nile crocodiles regularly take down prey as large as water buffalo. These are apex predators that have remained essentially unchanged for millions of years because their design works. The post-dinosaur world looked at that design and said, let's make it worse. Deinosuchus, which technically lived alongside dinosaurs in the late Cretaceous, but survived into the early Paleocene in some regions, could reach lengths of 35 to 40 feet, or 10 to 12 meters. The skull alone measured up to 6 feet, or 1.8 meters. This was a crocodilian large enough to prey on dinosaurs, and it did exactly that. Bite marks matching Deinosuchus teeth have been found on hadrosaur fossils. But Deinosuchus was actually restrained compared to what came later. Purosaurus lived in South America during the Miocene, about 8 million years ago, and is estimated to have reached 41 feet or 12.5 meters in length with a weight possibly exceeding 18,000 pounds or 8 tons. To put that in perspective, that's heavier than a fully grown male African elephant in water. Purosaurus lived in the massive wetland systems of Miocene South America, ambushing prey from rivers and swamps. The jaw structure suggests a bite force approaching 69,000 newtons, roughly 3 times stronger than a modern saltwater crocodile, and comparable to T-Rex. When Purosaurus bit something, bones didn't just break, they exploded into fragments. What did an 8-ton crocodile eat? Everything. Large turtles, fish up to the size of humans, smaller crocodilians, and mammals that made the mistake of coming to the water's edge. Terror birds, for all their dominance on land, had to share South America with Purosaurus. One imagines they approached water very, very carefully. Yet somehow, things get worse. because some crocodilians decided water was limiting their options and took their nightmares onto land. Cebacids were a group of fully terrestrial crocodilians that appeared after the dinosaur extinction. Unlike modern crocodiles with their conical, gripping teeth, cebacids had zyphodont teeth, blade-like, serrated edges built for cutting flesh. These weren't ambush predators lurking in swamps. They were active hunters, capable of chasing prey across land, with limbs positioned more upright than modern crocodiles, built for speed and endurance. Baronosuchus arvaloi from Paleocene Venezuela represents this nightmare in full form. Estimated at 10 to 15 feet or 3 to 4.5 meters long, it combined crocodilian armor and jaw power with a body plan that allowed for terrestrial pursuit. The skull structure suggests it could open its jaws wide and use those blade-like teeth to saw through flesh and bone with frightening efficiency. Imagine running from a crocodile, not swimming away, not hoping it won't leave the water, actually running on land, and the crocodile is keeping pace. Its legs, instead of splaying out to the sides, operate more vertically, allowing for efficient locomotion. It's not particularly fast by mammalian standards, but it doesn't need to be. It's armored, it's persistent, and its jaws can crush your femur like a breadstick. The cebacids went extinct by the end of the Miocene, probably due to competition from large mammalian predators and climate changes that favored more modern crocodilian body plans. But for roughly 50 million years, crocodilians experimented with terrestrial predation in ways that make modern crocodiles seem downright conservative. While the land was spawning new horrors, the ocean was conducting its own experiments in nightmare fuel. Marine reptiles like mosasaurs and plesiosaurs had vanished along with the dinosaurs, leaving enormous voids in the food chain. What rose to fill those gaps was, in many ways, even worse than what had been lost. Basilosaurus is technically a whale, which makes it sound almost friendly until you see the skull. This creature lived about 40 to 34 million years ago during the Eocene and reached lengths of 50 to 60 feet, or 15 to 18 meters. Unlike modern whales, which are generally filter feeders or eat smaller prey, Basilosaurus was a dedicated apex predator, with teeth designed for tearing flesh. The name means king lizard, because early paleontologists thought they'd discovered a marine reptile. What they actually found was something far stranger, an ancient whale still in the process of adapting to life in the sea. Basilosaurus had tiny vestigial hind limbs still visible on its skeleton, remnants of a body once built for land. It was a predator in transition, caught between worlds. The teeth tell the predatory story clearly. Basilosaurus had heterodont dentition, different teeth for different purposes. Large conical teeth in front for gripping and puncturing, sharp triangular teeth in back for cutting. The tooth marks found on contemporary whale fossils match Basilosaurus dentition, confirming what the skull structure already suggested. These animals ate other whales. Picture the food chain implications. Modern orcas occasionally prey on other whale species, but they're relatively rare events. In the Eocene Ocean, having whales regularly prey on other whales was standard operating procedure. The apex predator was a whale. Many of the prey items were also whales. Whale-on-whale violence was just how marine ecosystems functioned. Basilosaurus wasn't alone in its dietary choices. Dorudon, a smaller contemporaneous whale, shows bite marks consistent with Basilosaurus teeth. These weren't scavenged carcasses. These were active predation events where larger whales hunted, killed, and consumed smaller whales. The ocean had developed a predatory hierarchy as complex and brutal as anything on land. Early whales were also still partially adapted to terrestrial or nearshore environments. Ambulocetus, which lived slightly earlier in the Eocene around 49 million years ago, had functional legs and probably hunted both in water and on land, using ambush tactics similar to modern crocodiles. It was only about 10 feet or 3 meters long, but it combined aquatic agility with terrestrial capability, making it dangerous in multiple environments. The shark situation during this period was also shifting toward nightmare configurations. Otodus obliquus, which lived from the Paleocene through the Eocene, roughly 60 to 45 million years ago, was a massive, macro-predatory shark reaching lengths of over 30 feet or 9 meters. It belonged to the megatooth lineage that would later give rise to Otodus megalodon, the largest predatory shark the world has ever seen. Otodus obliquus combined great white-style predation with size advantages that few prey species could counter. Tooth serrations allowed for efficient flesh removal, while sheer bite force could damage or kill large prey with single strikes. The Eocene ocean was warm, productive, and full of large prey items, ideal conditions for big predatory sharks to thrive. What makes the post-dinosaur ocean particularly unsettling is how quickly it developed complex predatory hierarchies. Within 10 to 15 million years of the mass extinction, marine ecosystems had reorganized completely. The old marine reptiles were gone, replaced by mammals returning to the sea and sharks diversifying into new forms. The transition wasn't gradual and gentle. It was rapid, experimental, and produced predators as effective as anything that had come before. For millions of years, the ocean was chaos. Whales were still figuring out how to be whales while also eating each other. Sharks were exploring every possible body size and hunting strategy. The food webs were unstable, constantly reorganizing as new predator-prey relationships developed and collapsed. If you were a marine animal during the Eocene, the ocean offered no safety. Every size class had predators. Every depth had something hunting. The water that covered most of the planet was simultaneously a buffet and an execution chamber. The parade of post-dinosaur nightmares didn't last forever. Between the late Eocene and the end of the Miocene, roughly 34 to 5 million years ago, most of the creatures we've discussed went extinct, and the more normal forms of life began to emerge. So yes, the dinosaurs' extinction was dramatic and catastrophic. But what came after was arguably worse for anything that had to survive it. The world didn't become safer when the dinosaurs died. It became stranger, more unpredictable, more experimental. Nature filled the void with everything from whale-eating whales to terrestrial crocodiles, to birds that crushed skulls with their beaks. But now, what was life like when dinosaurs ruled the world? Click here to explore the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous eras with us. This is Roaring Echo. See you in the next one.